haters gonna hate.
Hello everyone and welcome to the IGW Dev Talk, and today we'll be discussing the future of Imperium Galactic War and the things that will be implemented in the first steps, and as the game is getting relaunched soon, what kind of content changes and what kind of features can you expect in the first coming months, as well as what the game will look like in the future and how we get to the HD version. And depending on whether or not John Boomershine might make it today, because he's currently stuck in a traffic jam, we will have a talk about the lore, about what it's like to be in the world of Imperium Galactic War, which is a very mature, fleshed out universe that was created kind of to be very similar to worlds of Star Trek or Battlestar Galactica in a sense. So today's moderator will be LordBiggles, along with me. And
that would be me.
He will be asking questions regarding IGW from the players, and the most common ones that we keep on seeing. And from today forth, we plan on recording the dev chats. So, LordBiggles.
The first question for today, Miko, will be how is the closed beta going to work for Imperium Galactic War?
So the closed beta will not really be that closed. We will issue invites to the players most likely, just to ensure that, just in case, the game will not get flooded by new players. Because if the servers would not be able to take it, or something was wrong, it could be a disaster for the launch. And for that reason it's going to be closed. But that said, once we launch, the game will be launched, and there will be no, clears of the server. What you do with your progress will stay. It's essentially going to be just a relaunch of the game as it was back in the day. But unfortunately, no player data has been given to us by Kabam, so everyone will be starting from scratch.
So would that mean that when we switch from a closed beta to an open beta, there will be no player wipe?
There will be no wipe. Not at all. It's essentially the same game as it was. The only thing that's going to be changing is we might roll back to the version that was before the latest one, as it was a bit unstable. And once the game was shut down, the team was actually working on the Imperium event. So the current version that we are running and we're showing to you guys in videos that you can see is actually a new version of the game that has not been released. But the one that we relaunch is just going to be the same as it used to be when the game was shut down.
Okay, the next question will be a balanced question on how will you be dealing with power creep and new content of the game.
So
as many games have issues implementing these with an effective strategy.
So, as an MMO gamer, I believe that when you have content inside of an MMO, you need to look at the project as if it was a 20-year-old project or a 30-year-old project, because eventually this game, if you don't want it to die, of course, and that's the goal of any MMO game company, to have a project that will live virtually forever if possible, you will run into problems if you do not follow a lot of rules, and you do not impose yourself with strict standards and regulations on how the content can be added, because you can't just go full Dragon Ball all the time, going from power levels of 9,000 to like some billions or so. It creates a disproportion in the gameplay experience for new players and old players. You then need to do something like World of Warcraft is doing, that if you want to get to the max level, you need to buy the booster pack. Tons of content are avoided. Whereas if you assume that the project will be longer, and that when you distribute it inside of the development process over many years, then you realize that you should go for a more flat progression in many cases, and that ensures that the game is more relevant over the years, and new players are not pissed off because it's too hard to get into, and all players not get problematic, you know, with the way things happen with updates. So.
Thanks for answering that one, Miko. The next question would be, how long are we going to be on Flash for?
Sorry, one more time.
Are we going to be using Flash?
So the game currently, as it stands, the servers are the core of the game. Everything around the game happens on our servers. Now, the client can be anything. So that's the first step. It's 10% of the code base. We have a Flash version of the game from the time when it was shut down. And before the shutdown, Kabam has commissioned the creation of a Unity HD version for the game. And it's probably around 60% complete, in a sense, because what needs to be created there is the transition of a specific type of method that the user interface is being created in Unity. So it's basically the Unity and GUI system that needs to be swapped with the new one. And unfortunately for this development process, you need to allocate just a lot of time for a single or two or few developers, and you cannot just throw in more people to fix it faster. So with 160 user interface screens in IGW, it's just going to take a while to do that. So that's the biggest obstacle. Other than that, the game was running fine in most cases, and you could actually play it on the Unity client, but it was dropped when the development was dropped. So with that said, it's going to be probably around 9 to 16 months, and I'd like to say that the 16-month mark from the launch of IGW is a more conservative one. So, you know, it's most likely going to be 16 months.
Okay. The next question will be based on the artwork. When will the artwork be getting an upgrade?
And so, as far as the HD version goes, the current version of IGW, you do not see everything that was created for the game in the version that was left behind. So all the YouTube videos of the game actually miss out on a lot of content. The game was actually created as an HD version first, and then it was actually, I would say, uglified and turned into sprites so that the game would be as optimized as it could be, so that the game could run on Flash and on as many devices as possible. All the ships that are in the game have an HD version that has already been created, and the team at Kabam has spared no expense on creating that artwork. So the artwork will receive a facelift. The ships are done. Now the next step for the artwork would be the basis, and it's probably going to take 16 or 2 years for the basis to be upgraded to a new design. And once the game was being worked on by Kabam, the team has created artwork for the IGA faction, quite a lot of it, but unfortunately the brilliant concept artists that were working on it have not been able to finish their work on the Sovereignty faction and the Tyranner Empire. So all the concepts that you see from the game, the nice and juicy ones, from the HD version have been made for the IGA Federation, the Intergalactic Alliance.
Thank you for that one. The next question will be based on forums. We've heard it spoken in other dev chats before, but do we know when the forums will be implemented?
Okay, so we could have done forums many months ago with no problems, because there's a lot of software solutions that can be used for the forums. Now, the problem with them is that they require an account system, and we would like to make sure that once you create a Vavel account, it is going to be the same across all games and all things that we have, and that you will not have to recreate them. So for now, we have been keeping all the forums around the Facebook group. So all the discussions related to the game were on Facebook and on Discord, which to some extent I believe is a fairly advanced way of a forum 21st century, in a sense. But we will have new forums added probably a few months after the release of the game. We just need to make sure that it's hooked up to the game systems that are currently being still worked on for the launch.
Alright, I'd like to take a segment of the dev chat to ask some of the players.
If you have any questions to what I've already said that you think that might be worth answering, this includes you, Biggles, please do ask.
Just about to say that. Yeah, does anyone have any questions for what's been asked so far, or any new questions that they'd like to bring up?
Right, I hear a lot of cricket noise. But
Someone's typing, so we'll wait to see what he says.
okay.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, thinking about what to ask. Yeah, because a lot of the players who are present here have been attending the dev talks for many months now, and it's the first dev talk that we're going to be recording.
Like, we know nothing and got to ask them in a way for everyone, not just people who've listened to the previous dev chats.
Yeah, I mean, we've already had, I think, around 35 dev talks so far. It's been happening consistently every week since, I think, January.
While everyone thinks of some questions to ask, should we just go over the IGW trade system with you, Miko?
Okay. Well, like I said, as far as the content goes for the game, most of the things will remain as they were during the closed beta, because of the fact that we don't want to duplicate all the work that we do throughout the Flash client and the Unity client. So the grand future content upgrades are going to be done on the HD version within Unity, as it's going to be easier to implement that. So we won't be doing that much new stuff for the Flash client, and the trade system is one of those things that will come with the HD version. It might not be rolled out immediately as the Unity version goes. It might take some more time, but we want to make it so that people would be able to trade within the game, just like they could do in any other MMO. And I know that most of the games in this particular genre, that's a casual social game, have limitations on what they can do and what they can trade. We intend to go towards the way that full-fledged MMORPGs do it, and so we're looking at the trade systems that govern games such as Warframe, where the coiners would have to actually reach out to the player community and take items from them rather than buy them directly from the developers, meaning that the money sinks for the premium currency would be distributed across the player base. And if you find a rare vanity item that could be a decal or a color palette for the spaceship that would be rare, you would be able to sell it to another player, and he could get it cheaper from you than from the store, or some might not even be available for the in-app store. So that way we would create a need for the trade and a way for the players to actually make some cash for the game, so they can virtually just farm certain things and keep playing for free.
I'd like to welcome Vavel Boomer to the dev chat. Thank you for joining us.
Hi, John.
Glad to be here. Hi, Miko.
So I guess that now that you're here, unfortunately, traffic jams can be a problem.
Yeah.
We could proceed to the lore section of IGW in a second. Also, do an introduction of John, who's our design director and specifically the lore master of IGW, and the person who will be in charge for expanding the universe and John will have the chance to speak about his past experiences and what he has worked on before. And yeah, just right after we finish up the trade topic. Biggles, do you have any questions or anyone here that would like to have answered specifically about the lore? Specifically about the trade system in IGW?
I do have a question for the trade system. Is there going to be a risk aspect to trading with players?
So that is something that we're still thinking about, how we should do it, because there was a system where you could go to a it was a relay, and in that relay you could trade resources with other players. Now, I think that what's really cool is if you have a risk factor when you go buy an item that's worth a lot of money. You have to go to a different sector, and within that sector you need to trade with somebody to get the item. So you would have incentives to hunt people down for the loot, and the slogan of IGW is protect what's yours, take what isn't. So if you were to do a high value trade, you would sit in a relay for a few hours maybe with a ship to be extra sure that no one will kill you on the way home. And that's something that was in a game called Tibia very big for me, that whenever I had to trade I had to physically go to a different town, and along the way I was always scared as fuck because I was worried that someone would kill me and get my stuff. So that's basically what we want to do with IGW. But at the same time, we could make it so that those trades or the items that you trade have some kind of an insurance policy, so that if you lose this stuff, those items are protected and you won't lose them.
Thanks for that one, Miko. Does anyone else have any questions related to the trade system?
There is one that I have that I brought up in the text channel beforehand. What about for alt accounts that could try to exploit the system by, siphoning off of said alts for a main account, so to speak?
So you're talking about the... Oh, and John, please mute your microphone.
Oh, sure.
Okay. So, are you referring to alts bubbling or frabbling, friendly bubbling other people, or the topic of attacking your alts to get resources?
Well, that's one thing, but I'm talking about regarding the trade system as far as risk goes. Like, could that be a thing, or...?
Well, if you basically are doing a trade, first of all, you should keep it secret, because you don't want to say, hey, I'm going for town with $100 million in my car, because that's kind of like a very big crosshair for some A-team level stuff. And you become a target, so that's the first rule you do in those kind of games, that you don't speak loud and you trust no one, and you want to keep the trades down if you're moving around something that's really valuable. And the other thing is that you diversify the trade factors, and not everything will be around your base. The big relay is going to be where the bank is. So you will be able to bank your resources and items within the relay, which will make it safe for you to trade it. Now, if you're going to trade it with someone from the Sovereignty faction, then you might want to go to some kind of a relay that is neutral to all factions. But if the poor guy has a problem with trading, in your place, you could use that to scam him, or he could scam you. So that's going to be the risky part. Now, if you're going to be trading with someone from your own faction, that's a different story, and you're someone protected. But you never know if someone will try to backstab you with an alt account. And that said, we will not have restrictions regarding alt accounts. What I would like to have in IGW in the future is to think about the alt accounts as just another character that you create within the world of IGW. Kind of like in World of Warcraft, you got the 2 factions and you can choose from a lot of races, and you know, you cannot hop between them freely because it's a role-playing game. But yeah, there will be no restrictions as far as alt goes. And in the future, we might do something like a rubber band system, that if you have an alt account, your progress will go faster in case you basically have you know, a higher level account in a different faction. Like all the other like research speeds for that particular research subject would be sped up to a great extent, so that you can catch up with an alt much faster. And that's something that we might be doing.
Interesting.
All right, so Biggles, do you have any other questions?
I do have another question
Trade.
related to alternate accounts and trade. Yeah. With alternate accounts and trade, is there going to be any restrictions on giving your main account stuff from your alt account? Like, for example, giving palladium for thousands of palladium.
No
Sort of thing.
problems. I mean, it's your currency, and you can do whatever you want with it. Now, there will be restrictions as far as trading goes in general, and it's going to most likely be tied into an overall character level, so that if you would like to move around 1,000 of a premium currency, there would be an associated credit tax, but that would just be to ensure that you know, bots cannot be exploited for the game in the future. And if you have played Warframe, it's very similar to how it is there, where if you want to trade some value, it has a tax associated with it, and you need to work up for the tax through gameplay.
Anything related to using free rewards, like any reward system we'd have to boost your main account, like any mission rewards, and give your main account your mission rewards as a kind of like a cheese to give yourself more money.
Yeah, that's the way you can do it, kind of. But at the same time, the best rewards will be untradeable because we want to tie the progression to the lore and to the story itself. So I don't see that being a huge issue. Plus, once you get to that particular item or to that point in the game, you will already have it unlocked, so you won't need it again. You might want to actually cheese and help your alt account with your main account, but that's absolutely free. That's the way that MMOs work. I mean, you're this level 100 character, then you're gonna give your newbie character the best stuff you can get. So you're gonna start out as a demigod with low health, essentially, in most MMOs, so no problem there. Now, one more thing I want to add to the trade system is that the way we'd like it to be is that as far as restrictions goes, they would be imposed mostly on the player versus player trade, but there will also be a system with that would be regarding the stock exchange that we'd call the Malus exchange, and that would be hugely unrestricted, but it would govern itself in the same way that markets govern themselves. So if you would try to sell an item to another player through that system, you might not be able to do that because someone else might be bidding. And as the game grows, the economy will become more violent, and it's not going to be easy or even possible to abuse that system because yeah, somebody will most likely outbid you, and you will never see the actual contents of the bids that are outstanding. Kind of like RuneScape Grand Exchange.
clearing up a few concerns that some players had. Should we move over to the lore segment of the game now?
Okay. So for the lore segment, we have John Boomershine here, who will be actually the person responsible for the lore, and me and John will be working on it to make sure that IGW has a huge world that can be expanded by both the developers and the players. And we have a lot of good stuff that we can work on, specifically from the previous theme, which was made up of a lot of Star Trek fans and Star Wars fans, and people who grew up on Star Wars and such. So we want this to be a real, mature, Star Trek-ish world that you can just indulge in. So, John, if you could maybe talk about yourself a bit and what things you've worked on, because your pedigree as a game developer is, pretty impressive.
Certainly. My name's John Boomershine. I've been in the industry for about 20 years. Specialize in massive multiplayer online role-playing games. Got a fairly decent history of working on 5 or 6 of those. And Game of Thrones Ascent for the mobile, Star Trek Timelines for the mobile, Starfleet Command Series for PC. So there's quite a bit of Star Trek in my background, and I'll be doing what I can to bring all of that expertise to bear on Imperium Galactic War, and making sure that the lore that we build going forward on the game is going to be the kind that'll keep players coming back and wanting to know what happens next.
By the way, John, if you can move away your microphone a bit, I think the sound quality would be much better.
Okay, is it too loud?
Yeah, maybe, but...
Okay.
All right. So, well, you should also mention that you've worked on a game like EverQuest, which is fairly huge, and that you worked with Mythic and EA and a lot of other companies, because,
Right. Yeah, the massive multiplayer online games are huge undertakings, and they really need all the creative force you can possibly bring to bear on them. You have to have a framework of lore that can support almost any type of expansion that the developers want to put into it.
So that, down the line, as the content grows and we go with more years, we won't fall into a situation where there's a lot of loopholes and things that we haven't thought of that might just bottleneck us down the road.
Yeah, we try not to write anything that's going to cause like a stopper at some point. We want to be able to have as much flexibility as developers as possible in the future. So any kind of stories that have a definite ending, we try maybe to figure out ways that those can be cliffhangers rather than solid endings. Although we do want to have like some points of resolution where the player feels satisfied as to the kind of story that they've just been able to take part in and resolve.
Yeah, big thing for us in that regard is that John has been working on those games for many years, and he's been with some of the original development team behind games like EverQuest. But we've also followed all those productions over the last 20 years, and MMORPGs in general are not that old of a genre. So we just now see what happens to a game that's been around for 20 years. No one had this experience 20 years ago, because the games were, usually fresh, and no one thought that they are actually going to last for freaking decades.
Yeah.
So we come with this experience to IGW of gamers who have played many MMOs for the many years, and we've seen what happens to games like WildStar or League of Legends that gets created with a huge universe, and then they forget to go somewhere, or they go in a different direction, and no one knows where they're going yet. And all of a sudden they need to redesign things and have a hell to work with.
Right.
So
one of the best ways to put it is that this is an incredible opportunity to, at this point in the evolution of online gaming, that we have a lot of examples of the life cycle of these things. Like when they were, like we mentioned, EverQuest, when they're first starting out with EverQuest, it was envisioned as a 3-year entity that was be basically consumed, enjoyed, and forgotten at some point. No one expected it to last this long. So going forward, from a certain point in development perspective, it was kind of like finding their own way and seeing what worked and what didn't, trial and error. Well, we are the inheritors of some of those decisions, and we have a nice vantage point to see what worked and what didn't work along the way, and we can refine that and make it into a much deeper and smoother experience.
Yeah, a big thing for that to us is a project that we actually envisioned while we created Vavel, which was the Neventale. And the idea was to basically allow the players to work alongside with the developers to create content for the game in a seamless way, where the final say would, of course, go to the lore master, which in that case would be me and John, but also first go through a moderation system, kind of like Reddit or Stack Overflow, where, if you want to have a quest, you're free to add it, but you need to receive enough approval rating from other players before it actually gets implemented into the game. But at the same time, you could get a portion of the money that goes to the game directly to you based on the work that you put in. And, with this entire system, we were actually working on a fantasy title, which was a bit more complex, because we had to create a very massive world that would be created over many years, and that meant that the game's world would theoretically have to be 400 times bigger than Skyrim, and there's a lot of problems with that. But in case of IGW, it's very simple. We have a freaking galaxy. I mean, anything is possible in this world. There is more stars in a galaxy than we can imagine. So that leaves us with endless opportunities for how the conflicts and how different situations can pop into existence. And it's gonna be fun.
Yeah, there'll be an awful lot of amazing opportunities coming along if we can work out all the details on how something like that could come together, where the players of the game can unite and offer some of their own interesting ideas that could be worked into the game in a very believable and seamless way.
Yeah, another big thing was... go on.
A question related to the lore, if that would be okay
Sure.
with you, Miko. A big part of many of the newer titles in MMO and in the gaming industry is to have cinematics similar to the ones previously done by Kabam.
Mm-hmm.
Related to the lore, are we planning in the future to expand our cinematics?
Are you talking about the graphics of the cinematics?
Are we planning to make any more cinematics in the future?
Okay. So as far as new cinematics go, we intend to create more of them as the funds will allow us, and a lot of the content processes that we can put in place will be related to how much money we have. If the game starts generating as much revenues as something like, say, EVE Online or Vega Conflict, we're going to be able to create a lot of trailers and cinematics. For any new content, there could be a cinematic, and it's not going to be a problem. But bear in mind that the cinematics that were created for IGW originally, first of all, they had the voiceover done by Jeffrey Combs, who was a pretty big figure in the Star Trek universe, and starred in Star Trek Deep Space Nine and many others. So it's going to be expensive to do things of that detail, but at the same time, as the funds allow it, we will be able to do it. Now, the one thing that we want to do with cinematics and major reveals of the actual lore, we'll be doing kind of like story walkthroughs and lore snippets that would be visualized talks about specific subjects of IGW with concept art, kind of like the stuff that was done for Star Wars: The Republic, where they explain the lore and things of that universe. And I think that kind of content is going to be very fun for the players of IGW, and we would be able to keep it fairly cheap, even if we had very little funding. So that's going to be a big thing for the world. And it's very important to say that as far as IGW goes, it's a very dark, sci-fi universe. I mean, the first mission in IGW is you saving, a star pilot, to those who remember, and you're essentially given the opportunity to have some gristwater with her, which is an alcoholic beverage, and we intend to keep it spiced up. As the game progresses, we'll be able to, like I said, do more cinematics and do voiceover for all the quests that we can do. And if the game is extremely popular, we'll be able to proceed and create, voiceover that would be localized for different languages. As it currently stands, the game is localized for 5 languages, but it still hasn't been implemented to the game, so that the text would be swapped out with their language counterparts, but it's been localized.
Okay, thank you, Miko. The next question related to the lore from me would be to both you and John. And you mentioned that the game is going to be intertwined with the lore. So, short stories and stories with events in the game, are we planning any short stories when we have events going on to explain the event? Mm-hmm. And to give us a backstory on the event that would be happening?
Okay, are you referring to the user-generated content aspect of that, or whether we'd actually be creating new content and stories for the game?
Referring to both, I'd guess. More stories and concept for the game, for the events, like the Imperium event, for example.
Okay, so, John, by the way, if you could mute your microphone, it's breaking me through. So, essentially, we are going to explain more things for the lore, and for IGW, it's an MMORPG. There's 100 chapters, and I think that whenever anything gets added to the game, it should have a meaningful collocation to the lore. Now, as far as user-generated content goes, I mean, you guys will be able to use the toolsets and create bits of story for the game. And the way that would work, just to make a 1-minute explanation, is think of this as having a movie like Star Wars, where we create the main lore for the game, and we come up with the general script, but there will be a lot of missing pieces and bits within the world. So when you have a Star Wars movie, and Luke Skywalker, plot twist, loses his hand, at this moment he passes out for like 2 days, and you don't know what's happening in that period of time. So if you think that you have a good idea for what could have happened simultaneously while he was sleeping or somewhere else in the world, you would be able to suggest it. And then it would have to go through the entire content creation approval system, first for the players, then for the developers, and then it would be added to the game. But that would increase the amount of story content for the game exponentially. So John, if you would like to answer that, please do.
Sure. When it comes to things like stories, supplementary text, background lore, that sort of thing, my general instinct is to make that available more towards the web. Players generally don't like reading a whole lot of big walls of text as they're experiencing a quest or whatever. But it's more about showing than telling, in other words. But I'm not opposed to putting together like a number of short stories or tales that people can read offline and get more of a sense of the mood of the game that
or
way.
just be narrated, like I said. So if there was an event, you would receive this hologram or holograph, and that holograph would basically explain everything in 5 minutes or 10 minutes. There would be concepts, and you could go from there. But go on. Sorry for butting in.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. So Biggles, do you have any other questions, or Doombringer, who has just joined us?
I do have a couple more questions, but to give me a break from asking the questions, I'm gonna allow anyone else to ask any questions they've been wondering about. If you don't have a microphone and would like to ask a question, if you private message me the question, I will ask it for you.
Okay, I guess we can just go with the list. With Doombringer is writing something. But,
Any questions? Then I would guess we'll start in the next segment of the lore.
Mm-hmm.
And so how big is the lore of IGW right now, John? How big of a story and how big of a plot and backstories? How big is our total lore we have available to us at the moment?
Well, okay, go on. Sorry.
Yeah, from what I can tell, it's consistent and congruent with the size of the lore that I've seen in other MMO games that have been put together. It's comparable to what I was working on with Kingdoms of Amalur in terms of the core story ideas, and then the development of quest tales and content arcs around the same amount, freight of information. As we go forward, though, it's going to get a lot broader and deeper.
I mean, right now the story Bible is within, well, I'd say 4 major documents. There's one general one, and I think, I don't remember the amount of pages, but it's well over 140 pages, and then you have faction documents that explain each faction with, logs for captains, and they explain how the story of the world is happening, and that's each faction has like 70 pages for themselves, and then you have sheets for characters that have over 100 pages too, and each character has 1 page for them. So there's a lot of content that's been made for the game.
Yeah, I was pleasantly surprised to see that there were a lot of details, already worked out in the lore. I've had a couple of projects I've worked on in the past where the backstory and the pre-production basically stopped after maybe 2.5 pages of ideas, and it was assumed that everybody else would just embroider out the rest of the background for the game on the fly, and that's not always the best way to do it in development.
The next question I have is mainly directed to John, and it's to do with the lore again. But every game lore has a target audience of age range. So how mature is the lore going to be for IGW? So what kind of age rating are we looking at for the lore?
18+.
Yeah, I would. If the lore is like Miko said, it's a little dark for compared to Star Trek. There are going to be bad things happening to good people and so forth. That being said, there's ways that we can sort of have a dark, grim tone to the world, and yet not say anything or do anything that's going to cut away the audience of teenagers, late teens that might be interested in playing.
But then again, they legally will not be able to play the game in most cases unless they're over 18. But I was never stopped by the fact that the game was 18+. Unfortunately, for the age restriction systems that are benevolent and ideal. But that said, in IGW, the first mission is you literally save the ace pilot of your faction, and then you have sex. So it's done in a very subtle way, but those kind of topics exist. I mean, there is a slave trade happening for the Tyrannar Empire and the sovereignty and the good blue guys, though, you know, everything is always... and please mute your microphone if you're coming in. So it's always rudimentary, what is good and wrong, but that said, it's not going to be a humor for children.
Okay, if someone under 18 wants to play, obviously no one's going to stop them if they have a desire to play, if they're not in the correct age rating. But
I mean, there is going to be an 18 plus button. Come on, they need to say they're 18. So
we've all been in this situation when we've lied about that. We've all been there. But the darker side of the lore, is that going to be more for the online lore, or are we going to be including the darkness of the lore into the actual game story, directly into the game?
Yeah, like I said, the first mission of the lore is you saving a captain, and then you get an offer to have some whiskey with her. So the answers to what happens in the cabin can be answered by your own self. But we intend to make it grim. Plus, you know, if you remember from the lore, and you yourself are a huge fan of the Tyrannar faction and the Tyrannar lore. I mean, there is Pobieda Khan, and Pobieda Khan is the victory soup, made from the eyeballs of your fallen enemies. If that's not gruesome, then I don't know what is. But then again, if you don't see the act of eating eyeballs of your fallen enemies, I guess it's weak on the stomach. But we intend to make it more hardcore in the future and more realistic. And it's not going to be a watered down, lore, like in case of Venom that just happened this year. I mean, it was supposed to be a movie about a guy a mutant that eats people, and they turned down the PG rating to PG-16. From this horrific concept piece that was posted in Japan, where he has really messed up teeth to what we received. So nothing like that is going to happen in the future in IGW. We intend to keep real to the world.
Okay, thanks for answering that one, Miko. The next question I have is more related to the player interaction with the lore. We've touched on it a bit in this dev chat and previous dev chats. So if someone wants to submit something to John or to Vavel as a request or a story or a mission that they want to have included, what would the process for that as a player be? How would that go for a player?
So, the first process is actually, just coming to a dev chat for now at least, and talking to me and suggesting those ideas. Or, to John, depending on who's going to be talking during the dev talk. But in general, it's going to start with a forum post that will be posted in a special forum that would be close to most of the players, and only those who are, who have been attending dev talks will have access to it. So that, the initial phase of weeding out the good and bad things would happen there. And once the story gets approved, you would actually go with the idea, and you'd receive the tool sets necessary for the creation of the content within IGW. And we have our own tools that I think that it would be best to describe it more during another dev talk in the future, but you'd essentially get access to the tools that would allow you to create a content, and then you would submit your edits and things to other players. And if the players who are present in the forum believe that it's something that would be a good addition to the lore of IGW, then it would go directly to a desk of a writer or a level designer, or whoever else would be responsible for that part of content, and it would receive final review from the developer, and then it would be on a slate to go directly into the game. If it's a quest, it would most likely require voice acting, and it would take many months in most cases for a piece of content to be implemented. But that said, it would get there eventually if it gets approved. Plus, you know, we would like to share a bit of the money that we gain from the players back into the community. And a big thing for us is giving 5% of the net revenues of the game back to charity. We intend to do the same thing with the player development budget, whereas a portion of the revenue of the game would go back to the players who would also act as part-time developers, or, you know, modders who would like to create content. So I think that's that would explain this process. One more thing I want to add to the depth of IGW's lore is, to those who do not know, IGW is an MMORPG, and as it stands right now, there are 3 factions with I think there's over 100 quests available for each faction, and the story has 10 chapters. So there's quite a lot of lore, and all factions have a different storyline. So the immersion that you can get in this world is high. But for now, there is no voiceover done for the lore. And I'll be posting some videos of the actual story missions soon. So be peeped for that.
I would like to take another chance to ask if anyone had any questions they'd like to ask John or Miko in regards to the lore at this current moment in time.
ECD? Okay, I guess your microphone is not working well. So do you have any other questions that could go to John Biggles?
I do have one question for John, and that is, if the lore is being intertwined very heavily with the progression in the game, does that immediately mean that people have to know the lore to progress, or is it going to be more related to than not game knowledge rather than lore knowledge? Because a lot of people don't have time to learn the lore in depth to progress in the game, if you understand what I'm trying to say.
I could answer that one, actually. Well, as far as the lore goes and the way the gameplay of IGW is, some called it EVE Online Lite, and the reason for that is that it's not a very complex game, and we do not intend to make the game extremely complex so that it is also appealing to casual players. While you're playing the game, you can experience the lore through gameplay, but in most cases, it's not like you're gonna have to decipher everything for the lore. Now, some of the missions are gonna be lore-oriented, and there is going to be a lot of contests and things that you actually need to figure out for yourself, like go to a specific Stargate or decipher a clue, you know, figure it out based on the lore. But in most cases, you're going to be able to do it with a spoiler, if it's going to be an in-depth mission regarding lore. Whereas the main lore is going to take you on an experience, you know, by hand, as a lot of video games do. So you won't necessarily need to know all the bits. John, do you have any bits you'd like to share with that?
Yeah, basically what you said, but ideally, knowing the lore will help you enjoy the game a whole lot more.
Oh yeah.
I think we've wrapped up the lore quite nicely. I think we should ask the players if they have any general questions about the game for the next part of the dev chat.
Yeah, I can also add, while we wait for the questions, you know, we could basically say that there is going to be a portion of the game that will be more convoluted and mysterious, because one of the things we're working on currently is designing a language for the Regulan people. So for those who know the lore of IGW, Ragnar Tyrannus has invaded a planet that was inhabited by both Lacertans and Regulans, who were at a constant war, and he basically gave them an option to either die or join the glorious, conquest of the universe. And while he did it, he basically erased the entire culture and lore of, the Regulan people. So, as players, you will be able to uncover the bits of the Regulan story, and that's going to be a very cryptic piece of experience, because we intend to uncover the lore of the Regulans, both in English and within the Regulan language. So the leaked information about Regulan is actually going to be in Regulan, and the players will have to figure this out. So think of this as a kind of challenge that we're slowly prepping here. And, the only thing I can say is that, the actual outcome of this challenge is going to be related to a special character or something that will be uncovered in the future, but it's going to happen over many years. And we intend to do it that, and we will soon uncover the first pieces of the puzzle.
Alright, thanks Miko. Jarvis, would you like to ask your question now?
With talking about the Regulans and all that, you're saying that's going to be a part of the lore. Are we looking at, like, with certain bits of lore that are related to each other, are we gonna be, like, calling them certain things, like, for this instance, like something like Chronicles of the Regulan Genesis or something like that?
Yeah, kind of like that. I mean, think of this as the things that will be uncovered would be mostly the Bible of the Regulan people, and the way you should approach this as if you received this entire book that was written hieroglyphs, and to those who know from history or who do not know, the hieroglyphs were this very mysterious thing for many years, and no one knew how they work. But thanks to the finding of the Rosetta Stone, which had the same message and a small dictionary written out in 3 languages, it allowed our historians and archaeologists to figure out how the language works now. So that's the same thing we want to do, but with a fictional language that was created by cat people on a really hostile world. Plus, it's not going to be as exquisite as a language that was created by the country where pharaohs lived, because, let's be honest, cat people were not the smartest thing in the universe. Because, yeah. So, essentially, it's going to be a much simpler language, but there will be a lot of depth to it, as an ancient culture goes. I don't know if I answered well.
Do you have anything to add to that, Jarvis? Like, anything to add to the question?
No, that pretty much covered it.
Cool, thank you.
I'm all out of questions, so anyone else want to ask a question?
Okay, I guess that this part of the Death Talk has been wrapped up, and it's already been around, we've been talking for a bit around an hour.
Hello guys.
Oh, hi BC.
Sorry for the late.
No problem.
Oh, sorry guys. My mic just stopped working, so I guess I'll join the next Dev Talk. Nice to meet you guys. Sorry by the way. Miko was looking forward talking to you, but I guess I have to wait for the next Dev Talk.
It's alright. You can actually ask the question now.
That's okay. I will definitely, for the next one, I'll prepare myself better. I was just really happy to hear you guys actually in action. I've been following the page for quite a while now. I mean, since I think the beginning. but never been really contributing much, was not being able to join the dev chats. But it's really cool me meeting you all, and also want to say express actually the thanks for reviving this awesome game, and hope the development will soon, and we get the release. That's really great what you guys doing. I really appreciate it from a player's perspective.
Thank you. I mean, we're working really hard on getting this game back up. It's
awesome.
It's been a very long journey. I actually had a talk about it 2 weeks ago during a game industry conference in Poznan, Poland, and it's been a very, very long wait, and for both the players and us developers, because let's be honest, once this game goes live, it is going to be successful, because there is no other game out there that would have a single universe and would have the added benefit of not being complex as hell, that restricts new players from joining. And unfortunately, well, EVE Online is a great game, and I think it's one of the best games ever made. It's also a game that I, as a game designer, am scared of joining, because it requires a lot of time to just learn.
Oh yeah, tell me about it. Yeah, tell me about it.
So, anyway, guys, and BCD, thank you for joining us for the first time. Thanks to John for attending and talking a bit more about himself and the way the lore is going to be shaped. And thanks to everyone who came, and LordBiggles for moderating this talk.
Yeah, thanks everybody. It's going to be very exciting.
Thank you.
All right.
This dev chat is adjourned.
Well, have a good evening.